Hi guys, I'm back with another show and tell video. This is again a dyeing experiment. I have some basic coffee dyed paper, but the exciting stuff is kind of toward the end. Let's see what kind of patterns I got. I didn't get it. This is just copy paper. I got a lot of lines, which I liked. And I have been scanning these into my computer so that I can print them out and use later. And I figured if I wanted the crinkle effect, because my printer is not an inkjet, it's a laser, you can get it wet and the ink doesn't run. So if I want the crinkly effect, I can print. I'll show you what that's from. Can you see the impressions on there? I can print these and then get them wet and then let them dry, and they'll have the same effect as, oh, there's another one, as coffee dyed paper would. And where I got these impressions was letting these bake in the oven. I coffee dyed some of these Graphics Fairy Halloween images. Not that when you see this, I'm not still working on Halloween stuff. It's just I had this in a stack of paper, and I was like, you know what? I'd like to make these look more, vintagey. So I coffee dyed them just to see what would happen. And I layered them in the paper piles that I layer in my oven to bake. And the toner, when you heat it up, it doesn't run when you get it wet. As you can see, I dipped these in coffee, no problems. But when you bake it against another piece of paper, it sticks. And when you peel it, it kind of leaves a tattern, like this cat is kind of tattered. And it leaves an impression. So like I have a little shadow impression on some of these pages from these. That was probably the most exciting thing that happened with the copy paper. I didn't do anything to it. I dipped it and baked it. That was it. I wasn't really, and this was just coffee. And it was brewed coffee versus, that's what I was experimenting this time, was to see how different it is to use brewed coffee rather than the instant crystals. And then I went out and bought myself a canister of instant crystals that was on sale because it's easier. And it doesn't really like have a huge effect on. All right, so we did a few things with index cards. So with some of them, I splattered them, which I thought turned out kind of cool. They'll make fun note cards. And it's kind of like, this is the side with the lines on it. So I figured if I wanted to turn them into journaling cards, this would be the side that I would keep so that there's lines for writing, and then I would cover this side. So I didn't do anything to that side. It's one of the things I've been trying to pay attention to with the journaling cards, unless I want a blank, unless I want to leave that. But in a lot of cases, I've gone through and made sure that I put the stencils or the vinyl or whatever on the lined side. Well, not on that one. Can you see that? It's getting better. I have found that if you put the stencils down, they work better if they dry faster and with heat, which is why I think some people have told me that it works really good if you spread them out in the sun. And I think that works good because I think that the heat and the fast drying helps versus sitting them on my dining room table in the chilly weather and them not drying at all. But I got some good impressions with this. And these were layered. That's why there's stuff on both sides. But I thought that it would be neat to have this as the journal side with the decoration pattern in it. And then this is the blank. If I want to cover this and make a journaling card out of it to tuck in a pocket, then you get to keep the stencil. If I use the line side as the, and some of them turned out really good. I like the way some of them are positive, like it's brown, and then some of them are white. I'm not really sure why. The more I do this, maybe I'll be able to, these are some other stencils I found. Sorry, I'm flipping through trying to find the ones that, oh, I'm not even checking the backs. I love the burnt edges. So like that's an effect from baking it in the oven. It's not brittle. It doesn't like chip off or anything. So it's not like burnt, but it's like the darker. See, those have some good pattern on them for. This one I think was my quilting vinyl. My quilt, it looks like quilt squares. That one turned out pretty good. I think this was that, I have a blue and white, and then this one's got extra lines in it. I guess that was on the, I do this on a cooling rack, you know, for baking. I have a cooling rack that I stack all the paper up on and then sit it on a cookie sheet and then put the cookie sheet in the oven and bake it like that. So the bottom pages sit on the cooling rack and they get those lines. Okay, I did do, with the coffee, I did some more scrapbook paper. I think when I'm doing the scrapbook paper, I think the coffee works better than the tea just because tea is kind of lighter. It comes out lighter. And I don't know if you can see this, but because this was a solid color, I stuck the mandala on there. And I don't know if that's showing up on camera or not, but the mandala was on there. And then you can see in the blue, I had a sheet of vinyl on that one. I've started doing it where I don't necessarily try to put it, not on purpose. I don't try to put stencils on the pattern paper on purpose anymore. It just doesn't, I mean, the pattern drowns it out. So like that one, you can see there's a pattern there and the mandala, half of the mandala there. And the same with this music paper. So half of the mandala. And then the back sides of the scrapbook paper, minus this, that's just a blank piece of white paper. So there's no copyrighted design here. So if I get something really cool on the back of the scrapbook paper, I scan that too. I do not scan the pattern sides because those are obviously copyright. Which means that these ones, neither side gets scanned. But I do like the way that's stuck to something. Sometimes the papers themselves stick together. So I just really like the way the coffee dyeing like knocks some of this color back. I mean, like the really bright pages, sometimes this is a great way to get them looking, and there's the line. So this was sitting on the, it's a great way to get them knocked back so that they don't look quite so bright, and you're more likely to use them in a more vintage journal. This paper is one of my favorite paper pads that I have, and it had, I want to say, 3 or 4 of each pattern in it. So I've used some of them. I dyed some of them, and I of course kept some of them. What I really like about this is, can you see the letters? The coffee was attracted to the letters that are stamped with glitter on this side. So the ones that got, so like there's different letters. All you can see them on there. Some of them are glittery. The ones that are glittery apparently attracted the coffee. So some of these letters, coffee dyed on that side, which I thought was really neat. I still have to scan some of this stuff. Some of this stuff I haven't scanned. I like to scan them because it gives me lots of options for later down the road. Now on this one, this overlapped the letter paper, and some of the letters made imprints. The glitter letters made imprints on this one. I don't know if you can see those. Like I said, a lot of times if I dyed it, it was to experiment to see what it would look like. But I had 2 pieces of it. I really like how this Paris paper turned out. This is for the Paris journals from, this is a pad of like school paper, school scrapbook paper. Like if you wanted to do a kid's book about all their activities and stuff at school, that's what that came from. There's 2 of them. I must have had a bunch of those, or I just didn't really care. And it was really bright paper. So these got knocked back a lot. And as you can see, it's lined. So it's supposed to be like, you know, school-age kids. So it would be really cool to cut this middle part out and make journaling cards out of it. I don't know what I'll do with the cartoony. Maybe they'll go into little golden books or, you know, something like that. That really burnt. That actually is really brittle. But yeah, every once in a while I would forget I was baking paper. So some of them have darker edges than others. But like I said, I just really look like that. See that? That's like burnt. Like it cracks and is stiff. Could you hear that clicking? That was it cracking. I like this. The toile with the coffee. This was already kind of a grungy style, but it was industrial. See, it says Industrial Park Collection. It was already kind of grungy, but it was grungy on white. So I wanted to see what would happen if I coffee dyed to get some of this looking more dirty. So that it actually looked grungy. Here's some more of that school paper. This actually bubbled. Like, I mean, that's not the paper itself. I don't know if you can hear that. The paper itself actually got a bubble between the layers of paper, which I thought was really weird. Never seen that happen before. And again, this was just to knock back color like that. On some of this really bright paper. So, and again, I'll have to take some of these. A few of these will go back up to my computer and I will scan them. I'm not going to sort through them on camera to figure out which ones are which. But I finally took, remember in one of my hauls, I'm looking for a place. I can't tell you. You keep seeing these flash back and forth across my screen. I'm looking for a place to set them. I finally mixed some RIT dye. Those RIT dye powders that I have. Now, I'm going to say this. This is an experiment. The RIT dye powders, how they tell you to mix them for fabric, it's actually got more than one set of directions. So like it says, you can put the entire packet of powder into 2 cups of hot water. I did it in 4 cups and it was still really dark. It also says if you're doing a pound of fabric, that you put the packet in a gallon of water. So, you know, I was getting mixed messages. I did what I did, and I would dilute a little bit here and there as I went. One of the first things I did was these. So, I mean, I'm not going to go through all of these, but I, as you can see, I did blue and green. Some of them were really dark. And the idea behind, and then some of them I diluted out so it got lighter. Now they don't do exactly what a stamp does. So like a blue stamp, usually the print on the stamp is not black, it's white. So it'll be a white image in a blue background. Now obviously these are pictures from a book. So they were black images and I dyed them. I like the way this one came out kind of, I didn't do this on purpose, was kind of my point. And then I laid them down on the grate. So some of them have lines on the back. You can see here. The grate that I laid these on was an air frying grate that you put like French fries on in the oven. So it's got the grid is smaller, which is why that looks like that. So I did these with the RIT dye and I experimented with, you know, diluting it down and I would just float a whole bunch of them in there and then scoop them out and lay them out flat. They did get, baked. Some of them I set to just dry, but some of them did get baked. I need to get like a box or something to put them off in. It'll take me forever to collect all those up and put them somewhere. I did some scrapbook paper. The copy paper that I'm going to show you, which I was really excited with how it turned out. The copy paper I'm going to show you, I've already scanned. Some of this scrapbook paper I'm going to scan some of. Now, we were talking about knocking back color. This was with the blue dye, and I wish I had the original sheet to show you, but it definitely, and that's how the back turned out. But it's definitely a kind of bright blue. And like I said, this was all experimenting, guys. I was just experimenting to see what would happen. Oh, the other thing I found out is some of these paper pads, if they still have the glue on them, the glue melts down in the oven and then pages stick together. But, so this piece of paper was green, and I was like, well, what if I stick it in blue dye? And then the back was pink, so it turned purple. I also tried to make sure that I picked colors that wouldn't, like this was red. So I said, okay, well, I'll stick it in blue dye. Because if you stick red in green dye, it's going to turn brown. So I stuck the red in the blue dye to see if I could make it turn purple. And, I do like how this turned out sort of, I don't know, speckly. So again, the scrapbook paper is going to get sorted and taken upstairs. The ones that I can scan the backs of. This was kind of pink, and I just wanted to see what would happen to it. Some of these I've thought about taking, now that I've made them blue, I thought about now taking them and dipping them in, now that they're dry, taking them and dipping them in coffee and seeing what happens. Because these are very, I mean, this was a vintagey wallpaper looking, and now it's like, I don't know. This was green. There's one of those lines. See that line right there? That's pad adhesive. So like these ones that still are from some of them still have adhesive along that edge, like barely discernible where you tear it out and that glue stays there. I didn't even think about it, but it melts in the oven and then it makes the pages stick. So just a note if you're dyeing scrapbook paper and you're baking it. Okay, so I don't like this paper. It's bright green with bright pink ladybugs and glittery stars. It came in a pad that I got that I do like a lot of the papers for little girl scrapbooks. And that's why I got it, because I have 2 little girls. Well, they're not little anymore, but I have 2 little girl baby books to make now that I've finished my boys. And I got this pad. I did not like this particular paper, so I said, well, why not? Let's dye it green. What I do, blue. What I do like is where all the glitter stars, this is kind of like with the letters, everywhere that they stuck these little glitter stars, I got these speckles. None of them look star-shaped really, but it speckled the back of this paper, which I think is really cool. This is going to get scanned. Like, not that, obviously. That's copyrighted, but that's not. I mean, that's just a pattern that happened because I stuck it in dye. Here's another one. Oh, I just wanted to see what would happen. I have a whole pile of I have like 10 copies of this Galaxy marble looking paper. And I just wanted to see what would happen if I dipped it in blue dye. Like I said, experimenting. And then I laid it to dry on another pattern piece of paper. This one, actually. It laid to dry on that. And for some reason, these little circles imprinted on this paper. It's always interesting to see what the scrap paper will do. Because the pages sometimes do things you're not expecting. Sometimes the dyes bleed into each other. Sometimes they just leave weird patterns. Yeah, I'm like this over here. See the pink? I don't know what that's from. But it's on this side too. And it was on the back of this one. So these obviously sat on a piece of paper that. Also, I'm probably going to, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. But these are cut aparts. So, yeah. I think this is double-sided though, so it's also stripes on the back. That was just a red piece of paper, and again, I was taking a colored piece and seeing what would happen if I stuck. It turned very, I don't know, it's very vibrant, almost like when you stare at blue Christmas lights in the dark. I don't know how to describe it. It's really weird against my eyes though. Oh, this might be, because look how that leaked through there. I'm pretty sure this red daisies. I thought it would be neat to dye this blue. It's the red. I don't know. Again, just experimenting with the colors. I don't know what made these streaky lines in this. Some of this paper dyed with this odd streakiness, which I kind of like. I don't know. Maybe it'll get copied. It might be the way the paper is made or printed. This was maps. Oh, this was from the Once Upon a Time pad, this fairy tales, and I just wanted to see what would happen if I tried to stick it in something. And it got like a blue tinge to it, but I mean, it was such a dark paper to begin with that I wasn't really expecting much. Some of these papers are really ugly. Like, there's a mass make or a video that Tina does where she puts a layer of gesso over these papers that you would never use, and then she does all kinds of stuff to them. And I'm gonna try that with some of these, because some of these I tried dyeing them and I still don't like them. So I like never use them, and it makes me wonder what possessed me to buy them. This is another one out of the storybook pad. This one had glue at the top. I can feel the glue edge. Okay, here we're getting into some where I laid lace down. Now, I tried different methods with this one. So, one of the things I was noticing is if I dip the paper first and then lay the thing down, the paper's already pretty much dyed. There was no way to get the pattern to show up darker than what was already there. Not well. So what I started doing, and I thought was really interesting, is as I was piling up my paper, I would have a wet piece, and then I would take a dry piece of, I didn't do that with this one, but I would take a dry piece of paper. Sometimes I would just, like, see, that's hideous. I would just, like, cover the back with dye and then not flip it. And then I would lay the piece down, put the stencil, dip the stencil in the dye, and then lay this dye on the dry side of the paper. And then I would sandwich another piece on top of that. Sometimes I would take dye with my hands, which I had gloves on. I would take dye with my hands and put it on the stencil to add more. And then I would put another dry piece of paper on top of that to soak up any excess liquid, but hopefully leave some of it in the lace. I did it a lot with the copy paper, and it did some cool stuff, guys. I can't wait to show you. That's how I got, this is a much better imprint of that lace sheet that I have. And so this is one where I took it and I put dye, I laid it in the dye this side down, or this side up. Okay, I did not flip it. So some of the dye soaked through from the back. Then I laid the stencil sheet down, and then I laid this one on top and squished it. Okay, now this is just blank white cardstock. And I smushed it and soaked up. And then I laid another piece of paper where this dye came from on this side. I laid another piece of one-sided paper that I dyed on only one side down. This was the imprint page from that piece. So I had a lot of dry pieces layered in. These didn't turn out as well. These were like a secondary stamp. So like after I had laid this down, put the screen on, dribbled dye on it, and then I took this and put it on top to soak it up, and that's the imprint that I got. I hope that makes sense. I'm really trying to explain it to you without doing it on camera, and yeah. Maybe one of these days I'll get this spread out enough that I can try and show you what I do on camera. That didn't get anything. Here's another one of the ones where I tried doing a lot of these black and white ones. I have a whole pad of this black and white paper. I really like the way these dyed blue because they dyed where the glitter is. If you flip it over, there's spots where the dye almost didn't take as well. So there's dots. And you know me and polka dots. So that's probably going to get copied. That obviously I can't copy, but I do like the way it turned out. Again, with the letters, I kind of like the way those, like the dye settled in parts of the glitter letters. And then you can see some of the, you can see them on this side, which I don't know. I just think that's neat that it does that. Again, this is one that did it. The little stars don't have glitter, but the dots do. So on this side, it's polka dots. And then, oh, this one didn't really do it as much. Although you can see some faint circles. And then here's some pages where I did this is green, obviously. This is one where I had the vinyl, that yellow vinyl sheet that I have. I laid it down and this died. I mean, I really got some good impressions this time around. I was really, really happy with that. This has the glitter polka dots again. And so the polka dot showed up here and they kind of drowned out the stencil. There is a stencil on there and I can see it. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see the scrolls along here? So the dots that came through kind of drowned out the stencil pattern, but I don't know. I might still scan it because I can play with the contrast and stuff on my computer and then who knows what I'll get. Okay, now. More fun. Once again, this was a lot of layering of dry pieces and sort of wet pieces and stuff like that. So I got some really nice stencil impressions. And then on the back, some of these stamps, I would lay the stamps down on a piece of paper and then cover them. So some of these stamps baked in the oven too. And it's funny because they left imprints on some of my paper, which I thought was really neat because it looks like the shadow of old, I'll show you one out. But that's the quilt thingy. And see here, okay. So what I think happened here was, this is the stencil. I lay down a dry card. I took the stencil and I dipped it. I laid it down, which is why you get the blue around the outside. Okay. So I laid the wet stencil down on the dry notebook card, on the dry note cards. Then I rubbed more dye in, which is why you get dye in the stencil. Make sense? So there's more dye that went into the stencil gaps. Okay. And then I took dry cards and laid them on top, but the dye was down in these stencil gaps. So these ones ended up being negative impressions. So the blue dye off the surface of the stencil, but nothing in this, it didn't pick up the stencil gaps with dye, it left them blank. So I got positives and negatives, which I thought was really neat. So here's some of the negatives. I'm trying to see if I have, no, it was just blue. Here's another negative. Here's some more positives. There's some of the imprints. Now to me, that almost looks like if you were to stand back or a picture of an old wall, like in an old house where pictures were hanging on the wall for a really long time and then you took them down and they leave those dirty squares. Actually, they really leave clean squares in dirty wall, but that's what it reminds me of. And I thought it would be kind of neat to use it that way. Maybe take some, like I've scanned some of those cabinet cards that I have. And if I took some images and kind of ghosted them into those, I don't know, I'm gonna have to try it and see what it looks like. That one turned out really good. I literally took these, dipped them, and laid them. For some of these also, you're going to notice they're blue, but they've got some green on them. So if any of the dry pieces that I laid down didn't, oh gosh, guys, I had so much fun with this. If any of the dry pieces that I laid down did not dye well or had a lot of open space, like these, some of them died and they turned yellow. I did these. So I would take a doily and dip it and then lay it on the paper. So lay it there. And then, and I dipped both sides of the doily. So I dipped the whole doily and then I would lay it there. And then I would take a dry piece of paper and I would stick it on top of there. Okay. So that's where I get some of these doily impressions. I had so much fun with this, guys. I was so impressed with how some of this stuff turned out. Look. There's a mandala one. And again, this is experimenting with partially dipping pages with the copy paper. Like this piece got dipped on one side, but not on the other. So it's dyed and then just whatever soaked through. Here's, again, dyed and whatever soaked through. I scanned most of these, guys. I have digital copies of like all of these really cool patterns. There was no way I was going to use them if I couldn't recover them. Now, granted, I can dye them again, but this, here's that quilted page. Like I said, this was probably set. So this got covered in dye, and then this got put on top to soak it up, but dry. This alternating of dries and wets and kind of using my hands to push the liquid into the stencils and stuff, or onto the vinyl, or dipping the vinyl and sticking it on a dry piece of paper worked a lot better than just laying the dry vinyl on the page and leaving it. Look at that one. I mean, I love the way these turned out. I don't have any of these that I don't like. I'm trying not to take forever. I have a stack behind me still to show you. Here you can see the butterfly. I was having trouble showing you the butterfly in the tea dyes, but there's... Oh, and then these are some printouts from some digitals that I had, and I just figured, what the heck? So I dyed them. I don't know if I will use the animal sides, but who knows? But it kind of dyed the backgrounds, because it was a colored animal on a black and white background. So it kind of dyed the backgrounds, which are like foresty and stuff anyway. Dyed them green. And like I said, I did this in kind of color pairs. So I did green first. This is the first set that I did. And even with the green, the idea to put dry paper down and stuff, because like I've got a bunch in here that are dyed totally green. But the idea to put like the vinyl down and stuff on dry paper, like that one was dyed first. I laid the vinyl down and I gave it a shot to see what would happen. This was dipped on both sides and just laid on top of stuff. I mean, and then I started thinking, well, what if I dipped the stencil and put it on dry paper? And what if I used my hands to, so I started just messing with it and seeing what happened. Because, I mean, what's the worst that happens? You dye something you don't like, you tear it into pieces and stick it in clusters or something, and then you move on. Don't do that again. These, again, were some that were dyed only on one side. Some more only on one side. And then I have these that, for whatever reason, you can see the stencil there. For whatever reason, the green, like when it would bake, sometimes it would separate out into this pale yellowish green color. So, like, look at that. I love that. That turned out really good. That's really nice, sharp image. And then, there's that one. That got laid down on top of the edge of that stencil. I think I did that on purpose, and I figured I could cut this and use it as a belly band or something. So, and some of them wrinkled up really good. I mean, and I don't mind the wrinkles. It adds to the paper. And that's like self-made journaling paper. Okay, so this was all the green ones. And then you saw all of the... So, like, I did a bunch of green doilies, obviously. And then I opened up blue, and this was after I had baked the green. So I saw how some of this stuff turned out. And it encouraged me to do more. I have a bunch of pink doilies, so I dipped them in blue. A really weird thing happened. I couldn't get some of them to separate. And when you dye them stuck together, the dye gets in between there, but it makes bubbles. I did that on a couple of them. So, you know, so I have all these dyed doilies now. I like the way the pink ones turned purple. So I did these. These all got laid on paper. This one, I remember the paper that got laid on. It turned out really cool. And then you can see where the pink doilies laid on top of, like if I overlapped, and you can see the pink on there. That's from these doilies. So, and then the blue paper, as you can see, this was the first dip of blue. You see how dark that is? I was like, whoa, that's really dark. So, and I got some stamps that ended up being that dark. Oh, like that might have even sat right there. Okay, so they sat on this piece of paper in the oven. But there's that one, and it's got great lines in it. And as you can see, I dipped part of it. I don't know really how I managed that, but... Okay, here's some... there's pink there from the doily. You can see it good on that side, the pink. And you can see some green in the background of these. Now, if I had some green pages that were kind of plain or didn't have a lot of dye on them, I decided to re-dip them in the blue. And so some of these are mixed. Some of my favorite ones are down here on the bottom, and they're really mixed. So, see the more, I got more of those. It looks like one of those Victorian house wall clusters of frames. That's what that reminds me of. Is it just me? Okay. Here's that lace. This is more of that lace sheet. That one I'm struggling to get. There's a really good impression of a doily. And here's two overlapping doilies. And here's the two overlapping doilies. Remember, it's going to be a bottom and a top, so it got sandwiched. And there's that one, that real big one that I said made a really good impression. And because it was pink, it left some of its dye behind. So I have blue mixed with pink to make this kind of lavender color. But I also have the ones that I purposely mixed with green. There's that one. That turned out really cool. I mean, I was so thrilled with how these were coming out, guys. I couldn't stop dyeing. Once I started seeing them, I mean, look how big this stack of paper is. How long have we been going? I got like 40 minutes of video just in dyed paper. But I just loved how these turned out. I can't wait to do, I think I'm going to do red and yellow, so that if I get any of these papers where I can mix, the red and yellow will give me some orangey stuff. I might even mix some red and blue. Because what ends up happening is that RIT makes a ton of dye. The green I ended up putting in a glass. I have a full quart mason jar of green dye that I can go back and use. And I have a ton of the blue left. So I figure I'll do blue and red, and then I'll do red and orange. And yeah, I might even do yellow and green just to see if I can make some pale. Now see, here we're getting into the papers where it was green first. So what happened was these were dry pages that I would stick in the middle of other pages to soak up some of the dye to try and make the stencil imprints better. And they didn't get much of a print, so I used them as dry pages in between some of the blue dye. And I was getting more into patting or dipping the stencil and then laying it down, or patting a lot of dye on top of the stencil and then sandwiching it between two dry pieces. That seemed to work best. I'm going to be doing a lot of that because I love the way these turn out. They're marbly. Is that a word? I feel like I save all the really cool stuff till the end of the video. I hope you guys stick with me so that you see these, because, I mean, that's one of my favorites. I love that. Because it's got some green and some blue. And then look how dark those turned out. I mean, if it wasn't for the wrinkle up the middle, those would be perfect stencils. But in the same token, I don't mind the wrinkles. Remember, this is Here in the States, this is 20 pound. So this is really flimsy copy paper. So the other thing I was noticing is double dipping both sides. It made it really hard to handle after you double dipped it. But sometimes if I just dipped one side and took it out, it didn't tear as easy. I'm not going to say it didn't tear because it did, but it didn't tear as easy. But once it dries, it's pretty sturdy. It goes back to being decent paper. But 20 pound is what I've got. And I have a ton, like boxes of it. So that's what I'll be using for the foreseeable future. And here is the last one, guys. That is the end of my die experimenting. I look at this stack of paper. And like I said, the ones that are on the copy paper, look at that. The ones that are on the copy paper, I have already run through my scanner. So I have I didn't scan the doilies. Excuse me. If anybody knows, I haven't really looked it up or tried to research it or anything, but if anybody knows whether or not these doilies have a copyright of any kind, I mean, I imagine whatever company stamps that. I know they're machine stamped, but I don't know if they have, could I scan that? I don't know how, if that's an okay, if I'm allowed. Because some of these turned out really cool, and I would love to have them, you know, to use on stuff. But it might be one of those things where I have to dye them whenever I need them. But if anybody knows, you know, leave me a comment. Let me know. If you guys are enjoying these little dye experiments, you can let me know that too. If you're not, I don't have to make these videos. I just love sharing this paper with you because I love how it turns out. So I'm like trying to share so that if you know, have been wondering what it would do, or you've been thinking maybe I could try that, you can look at what I did and, you know, I've done it. If you don't like it, don't go buy dye and don't mess with it. If you know, do like it because you've seen it, then, you know, maybe it would be worth it for you to go buy some. I might, the other thing I need to do is try the bottles of liquid dye. I know it's concentrate too, but the liquid dye might be a little easier to like pour a little bit in the water and darken it as I go, work up instead of down. Because working down from the powder, I'm discovering is making it makes a large volume of dye, depending on how light you want it, because I'm constantly adding another cup of water here, another cup of water there to get lighter color. So I end up with a ton of dye. Like I said, I still have a whole quart jar of the green, and look how dark it dyes. So, I mean, if I wanted a paler green, I could even dilute that even more and increase the volume of the dye there. So yeah, it makes a ton. But anyway, I hope you guys like this. I had a ton of fun doing it. I can't wait to do more with different colors. I'll let you know how my experiments are going. And if you have any questions about what I did to get some of these pages, I hope I explained it well enough that if you liked the way it turned out, you can try it. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll try to do like a mini version of it here under my camera so that you can kind of see it. I'll clean off my desk, make myself lay out some plastic or whatever, and give it a shot and see if I can film it. So let me know. But thanks for sticking with me, guys, and I will see you guys in the next show and tell video. Bye-bye.